Wellington for the dream start.
Welcome to another episode. My name is Dean Vash. You can find me on X at hashtag Kangas, Instagram hashtag Kangaroos Podcast. We are back tonight with the regulars. Almost got the three, but it's the 2 out of 3, so we're slowly getting there, which means footy season isn't too far away. Jesse and Mark, welcome to the show. Really appreciate you coming on. We're here to talk about the intra-club match that happened the other day. Jesse, I'm going to start with you. What did you like about the intra-club match that happened on Saturday, wasn't it? So, yeah.
Yeah, so there was a couple of things that I was a big fan of. I think the form, you know what, actually, it probably surprised me pleasantly was Whitlock's form in terms of how far along he's come since we got him. He was a twig when we got him, and he's already put on a bit of size, and he did some really good things. I was very impressed with him and what he was able to do. I think, I could sit here and go, Sheasel was amazing, those things you expect,
Yeah.
but that was impressive. Another one who's had a fantastic preseason and who showed some real signs, Taylor Goad. He obviously has come a very far way, so I'm keen to see where he'll go in the future because he's looking very exciting. I'm trying to think of anything else. Look, I liked the midfield depth, and what I mean by that is I liked that they did rotate players through it. Tom Powell looks like he's had a ridiculous preseason. He's looking a lot fitter and he covers the ground better. I wouldn't necessarily say quicker, but he does look a step quicker. And he's just covering the ground better, and I think that's impressive. And then, McKercher, who Dwayne Russell, take that with a grain of salt, but Dwayne Russell reckons that he'll be better than Sheasel. So, yeah, he loves what he saw. And I love what I see as well. In all of the teams that I keep doing, I'd love to be able to have him in the starting midfield because he just adds a dynamic that's not there. But geez, we've got a lot of midfielders and they all look like they've had absolutely ripping pre-season. So how do you fit them in the side? I couldn't do it. I struggled.
Yeah, I mean, you've still got Jai Simpkin to come into that team. He was playing for the Indigenous All-Stars over the weekend, so that adds another mix to it. So, yeah, there's a fair...
And how was his game? That was fantastic.
Well, he got best on, didn't he?
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was I think it was great watching it. I actually, you know what? Pleasantly, that's my win. Actually, that's what I enjoyed. Don't worry about the practice game. It was Jai Simpkin tearing it up in the Indigenous All Stars game because there were some good players in there. Bobby Hill was really dangerous in front of goal. I'm going to say his name, but Jason Horne-Francis
he was fantastic.
Looks like he's in absurd form. His ability to win the contest, but also his ability to score. But then Simpkins' ability to win the possession, a lot of contested. I think we kind of forgot how good he can be in the midfield just because he dropped off a little bit and then we've thrown everyone else in there and he pinch hits. And he was the main midfielder. Because there wasn't actually another genuine mid. Other people rotated into that, but he was the only pure genuine mid. And the thing I liked the most about it is his tackling was great, his contested possession was great, and he kicked 1 goal too. He could have kicked 2 or 3 goals, and I think that's the most important part because I think we all know he's going to play, half forward flank in front of the ball a fair bit this season. So it's good to see him applying a lot of pressure. There was that turnover goal that Pickett ended up scoring off where he laid a huge tackle on Erasmus. So, I thought, it was really impressive. And it was impressive to do it because a lot of people probably don't know a lot about him. Just us being a small club, not necessarily someone that, is well known. It's, he's a good player, he cracks in. So I think it was good for someone to get on, a pretty big stage. A lot of football fans would have been watching it. And for him to crash in like he did. So I that's my win of the week. Don't worry about the practice game. Everyone's back on Jai Simpkin.
Well, he's going to play a very important role for us this year. There's no doubt about that. And obviously, no real issues with the concussion or anything like that.
He looks in ripping nick.
He does.
Ripping nick. And I think he said post-game that he had niggles last year, plus there was some mental things. He just said he wasn't right last year, a lot going on. But he looks in ripping form, which is exactly what we want.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if this played a part in it, but he did break up in a long-term relationship. So there's a lot of things outside of football that
Oh,
can affect you
100%.
on field, and obviously getting knocked out again, having another concussion through that Jimmy Webster incident.
Oh,
Yeah,
100%. And that would be scary. It'd be
Hmm.
scary because it happened to him the once, and then he had those niggles during the year. There's always the risk of concussion. It was a bad concussion as well. I mean, it would be scary. It would be
Hmm.
scary having like that, knowing what's going on in sports at the moment, and you'd have all of those self doubts in your head. So I can understand him having a rough year, but I think people forget he's a he's a top line pick. We're talking about someone, and again, take this person with a grain of salt. That Paul Roos said that when he was coaching Melbourne and he had trained with them, he would have played in the starting midfield as an underager along with Petrarca and Oliver across over Viney, etc. So he was, yeah, there was a lot of people who were a big fan of him as a junior, and I think we just haven't seen the best of him. And I think we've got an opportunity to do it, albeit we've got 35 midfielders who we want to see the best out of. So how we fit that in, I'm still struggling. But it was good to see him in that form. I was really proud of him.
Well, we're 6 minutes into the show, Jesse, and Mark hasn't said a word yet, so he's going to have his chance now. I do have an intro here for you, Mark. There you go. The crowd have gone wild. They want to hear from you, Mark. What did you like about the practice match?
Um,
Have I thrown you off there?
no, it's not. But no, I'm used to that. For me, this time of year, I get excited about the players that aren't expected to do much when they start to show something, because particularly when we've paid nothing to get them, because that can be the difference between not necessarily this year, but down the track being a force, because it's that your bottom 4 or 5 players always seem to make the real difference at the pointy end of the year. If you can find some real diamonds in the rough through the mid-season draft, like Robert Hansen Jr., or a rookie like Finbar Malley, and they come on long term and be top 22 players, it really is a bonus. So I was excited by both of them. Finbar's kicking for goals obviously an issue that he's working hard on at the moment. It's not quite right, but he's as good as anyone at the club in terms of clunking them. He's unbelievable. So that's a secret. That's a massive weapon if you can get his kicking for goal right. Certainly won't have too many opposition teams being able to intercept mark us like they have been for the last 4 or 5 years. That's for sure. So I'm hoping he continues that progress. So I was excited by those two in particular, but I agree with Jesse about Whitlock as well. I thought he was excellent. He just looked very comfortable for a guy who's sort of straight out of school playing against men, who's a tall, and a lot thinner, but he's very competitive, very composed, smart. He's good on the ground. And Goad, as Jesse said, also was really exciting to watch. I think a lot of people were nervous about him last year, but he was at 277 centimetres. He was a bit of a baby giraffe last year. He was very skinny, so it made it tough for him. But he's done a great job putting on the weight, and that bloke has got some serious speed. He's got wheels, which will make him very dangerous forward. When if he's going to be a second ruck to Cherry, hopefully he'll be able to develop some really good forward craft, because he's got some athletic traits with his leap and his speed that could be very exciting in that sort of role. So that was great. The other thing is the midfield. One thing stood out is depth in the midfield is ridiculous, particularly when you've got someone like Zane Dersma starting to run through there in the wing. You just start looking at it and go, well, how are we going to fit all these guys in with Simpkin, as you mentioned, not playing, and Wardlaw still to come in down the track. You've got McKercher, who's not going through there yet, and you've got Finn O'Sullivan, who's not going through there yet. So long term, it's interesting. It just, look, it's a good problem to have, that's for sure.
No, it definitely is. Jesse, what are some of the things that you probably didn't like?
The forward entry.
That's been an ongoing issue. Yeah.
Well, 5 years of it, I think. Maybe 10. We were ever good at it? We haven't been good at kicking the ball inside 50 since Jared Waite was there.
Were you there, Jesse? It was very blustery, apparently.
No, I wasn't there. I was watching it. It was. Look, so I was saying before we joined on air. So I went down to the Footscray Essendon game, which is at the Witten Oval, and the wind. It's probably why I've got a bit of a cold at the moment. The wind was. It was strong. It was strong and it was cold. So I can imagine Arden Street, albeit just 5 minutes away, 10 minutes away, would have been very similar. So yeah, it would have been really blustery conditions. That wouldn't have helped whatsoever. Oh, the forward entries worried me. They always worry me. What I will say as a caveat there is that, unlike previous years, you've kind of gone, well, who can deliver the ball? Harry Sheezel. Other than that, just kick and hope, because the rest of the team aren't notoriously good kicks. Caleb Daniels kicking. I've always liked Caleb Daniels kicking, but Caleb Daniels kicking is absurd. He looks confident again. Again, someone else who I think needed a bit of confidence was left out of the side for a lot of the year at the Doggies. He's kicking is absurd. That makes a massive difference. And McKercher and his ability to deliver the ball, we saw it a couple times last year, but his ability to deliver the ball is just going to get better and better.
You can add Finn O'Sullivan to that too.
And Finn O'Sullivan. So all of a sudden you've got three midfielders being Sheezel, O'Sullivan, and McKercher, who I think are all actually very good deliverers of the ball. Different how they go about it, but they've all got the ability to hit a target, which I think is crucial.
Actually, Hanson Jr. is very good by foot as well.
Yeah, I know you keep a close eye on him, Mark. I'm sure you got a segment on here about Robert Hanson Jr. No, he does. I saw a couple of his kicks, and it was he's a pretty decent field kick, which is good because a lot of our players aren't just bad at delivering inside; they're not great field kicks either. So I think we're improving on that. And if you look at the other midfielders as well, funny enough, Tom Powell, I mean, we've already always known that his hands are ridiculous. Like they're absurd. They're Ben Cunnington like. His handballing is crazy. But his kicking, I think, is definitely improved in terms of his ability to hit a target. Will Phillips has got an underrated kicking style as well. He's not a long kick, obviously, being a shorter player. But I think we saw this a couple times. There was that game where we beat Carlton a couple years ago, which was a little bit of an upset. And I remember Larky kicked like 7 or 8 on Wiedering. Yeah. And I remember Phil Phillips hit him up with about 2 absolute laser passes. He's kicking 30, 40 metres is pretty good. So all of a sudden, you've got all of these midfielders who have fantastic kicks. Simpkin probably isn't the best field kick. But that's okay. LDU has the power. He can land a really good kick, but at the same time, his kicking can also go a bit astray. And probably a little bit with Parker as well. He's probably not a notorious elite kick, but he's a good kick. So I think we're starting to add all these mixes to the midfield, and that makes a massive difference. But yeah, I think the worry for me still right now is the kicking inside 50. So I want to see that improve.
No, fair enough. What about yourself, Mark? Similar thoughts there, or anything else? More a little bit of a concern?
I find it hard. I watched it on TV. I've watched it on TV twice actually, but it's hard. It's hard to see on TV. I think some of those things, but it looked very blustery to me. The wind was a bit of a worry, so I'm not as worried about the inside 50s. To be honest, there wasn't much that concerned me. I think I'm trying to think of something that really. It's a bit hard when you're playing against yourselves. It's hard to be critical because there's going to be more.
Everyone looks good, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. But
wow,
I think our speed.
Everyone looks good. We were losing to the pink team in the second quarter.
Yeah. Overran them.
But I mean, I feel sorry for some guys in the pink team that really. I mean, Eddie Ford's done nothing wrong when he plays in the seniors. Yet he's finding himself running around in the pink team, and he was playing very well for them too. So
was Dersma early.
And Dersma early. I mean, Dersma's an interesting one because he's not physically ready to be a full-time forward in terms of a marking forward at this stage.
No, but you can see the attributes.
He's certainly got attributes. I mean, the idea of him being a forward mid, he's going to be very handy. He's got Fife-like attributes. I still question whether, and this is not a knock on his talent or his future ability. He could well be an All-Australian, down the track. I'm still not convinced it was the right decision for the balance of our list. When there was, it when Watson was sitting there. I don't know if they had their time again. We're looking at the depth of our midfield and the amount of mid-sized forwards we've got, like Zerha and Ford. Yeah. Braden George is still to come back. Curtis plays like a mid-sized forward. We're pretty overloaded with that type of player, and we're overloaded with mids, which he's also capable of playing. So I don't know. At the end of the day, we just want to see him do well for us, but we just seem very overloaded in those two parts of the ground at the moment, and it's going to be. I'm finding it hard to see where they could fit him into the round one team at the moment. I mean, he's only coming back from injury, so there's a bit of time. But yeah, look, the competition for spots is going to be great. That's probably the biggest thing that I took out of the game. Actually, was there is a lot of competition for spots in a lot of parts of the ground. You've got McDonald, Hardiman, Goda, Bergman down in the back line, those back flanks. You've got a number of people like Eddie Ford and Dersma fighting to try and get in on the forward half, and even Finbar Malley and Goad are now starting to apply pressure, which we weren't really expecting coming into the start of the season. So, even Boomer's son was looking, was giving a bit of cheek. So
yeah, good call.
Yeah, so he looks like he's up for the fight now. So it's going to be very competitive for spots, that's for sure.
Well, I think Cooper Harvey kicked 3 goals. He kicked 2 in a minute when he got under Charlie Coleman's skin and managed to get another free kick and kick a goal. So, yeah, look, it sounds like he's a little bit of a pest. Even when he did the duck and got the free kick, looked like a few players were pretty upset with him almost. So, but there's nothing wrong with that. There's always a role for that type of player in a team, I think. So, look, it's a big year for him. We'll go to the back line now. We'll talk about a few players here. Jesse, Matt Whitlock was in the Probables team. Obviously had a fantastic pre-season. You can see why. Aidan Corr in the Possibles team, so in the seconds team. Is it a possibility that, if Aidan Corr they don't think he's fully fit, that they might go with Matt Whitlock by round one? I mean, round one is creeping up, only a couple of weeks away. I think it's only 2.5 weeks away. So is there a possibility, or do you think they just getting Aidan Corr into full fitness and he'll be straight in round one team?
Look, I still think they'll go with Aidan Corr, but I think that. And you've got to remember, even being in the Possibles team, you're going up against the Probables forward line. Yeah. So being a defender, you're actually...
Yeah, it might have just been a balancing thing too,
Yeah. Look, and that's what I think. I think it's more likely than not that it's going to be Corr. Because you've got to remember as well, so we're up against the Doggies. They're going to play Darcy forward. They're going to play Norton forward. On the weekend, they played English predominantly forward. So they're still going to go with 3 talls. So that's something we're still going to have to consider. And I think Corr is probably a better bet.
Bigger body.
Yeah, just more experienced body. I've got no issue with Whitlock being given games, especially if he shows a level of... assuming he's also progressing well, then I'm happy to give him games. But the Doggies is a hard one. You're going up against, even with all the injuries they've got, they're going up against a forward line, which is very potent. So I'd be resistant from playing him round one. But the back line's an interesting one. Look, I think the option is that if Corr isn't fit by round one, you have choices all of a sudden. You've got Dawson, you've got Whitlock. It's a good problem to have, albeit it is still our weakest line.
Yeah, look, he's he's definitely come a long way, and look, he played a really good game, Whitlock, and that's all he can do is ask questions. Look, I agree with you. I don't think he plays early in the season, especially against the big bodies and the mature bodies of the Bulldogs up in that forward line. Even though they are missing a couple of players, I think it comes with risks, that's for sure. Mark, I think Jesse mentioned Caleb Daniel before, but I think he would have had 30-plus touches. It's quite obvious that they're using him for every link in the chain, aren't they? As soon as we get the ball, he seems to find space, and we just kick it to him, and he seems to find a target and, gets the ball past the outside, the defensive 50 onto the wing almost, and hits a target 9 times out of 10, doesn't he?
Yeah, I've always loved his kicking when playing for the Bulldogs. He was one of my favourite players. I was always jealous we didn't have him. So I love having him at the club. I'm wondering if he's going to get tagged because I think he's going to be that influential for us off halfback that they might, some opposition sides, probably not the better ones, they'll probably back themselves in, but I think there'll be times when he does get tagged and then they might have to look at doing some different things down there. If that was the case, who becomes the distributor? That would be the problem. But I'm worrying about something that's before it gets to that point. But yeah, he looks terrific. But I think Hardiman's a very good kick as well. So I think if that becomes an issue in a game, they're going to have to look for a different distributor. I think they're going to have a second player in that back half that's got the skills to be able to distribute the ball. Not as well as him, because I don't think there's anyone in the comp is as good as him off half-back in terms of kicking skills. But just accuracy, not distance necessarily. But, he's a fantastic addition for lots of reasons. He's a vice-captain of the Bulldogs, along with Parker and Darling, just their leadership. It's just going to be huge this year. So obviously, for everything the players are saying, it's been a fantastic decision.
It certainly looks like it already has its benefits, and that's before we've even played a game. Like you said, with a number of reasons, leadership, but just what he does out on a football field. It's going to release other players up the field as well, like Harry Sheasel. We don't have to rely on him, Colby McKercher as well. So, and maybe even Zach Fisher, who is carrying an injury at the moment. Another player that uses the ball really well here, Jesse, Darcy Tucker in the probables team, ahead of Hardiman, who I had him, but looks like, generally speaking, they will go the veterans early in the season, and I guess his form last year in the defensive 50 was quite solid. So he is quite a safe bet, isn't he?
Oh, God, you're pushing me with that one then.
It's good.
Yeah,
I've been his biggest critic too.
No, look, to be fair, he did have a very solid second half of the year playing down back, and he was able to get a lot of possession with it. I think his defense was okay. Look, I've got no issue with him playing games, especially because we can't just throw all the kids to the wolves. We've learnt that that's not what's going to make us successful. So he's definitely going to play games. Would I want him to get a game over a Hardiman or a Goda once he's fit? Probably not, assuming that their form suggests they're about the same, at the same level. But going in against the Doggies, it's not a bad idea to have, a little bit more experience in there. But yeah, look, I still lean towards having Hardiman. That other halfback position, I struggled with the most putting my team together the other day because, Daniel locks down one, but who has that other halfback? Is it a McDonald? Is it a Tucker? Is it McKercher goes there, but then it rotates around a fair bit? That one I really struggled with. Ideally for me, it ends up being Goda or Hardiman by the end of the year. I've got no issues with them playing Tucker necessarily around one, but from my perspective, I would like to. It'll be interesting to see how the games against Melbourne and West Coast go because I'll trial a few things, and I think that's going to give us a good indication of a bit more than just the probables possibles teams. Because while I think that suggested a lot, there was some balancing things there in my opinion. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But I don't necessarily have an issue because his defending was pretty decent. But yeah, it's not a long-term thing for me.
No, look, I mean, that's ideally what you want is one of these young guys like a Hardiman and Goda to overtake the veterans and, really, make that spot their own. I mean, that's the whole idea. But, yeah, I mean, it looks like Darcy Tucker, Luke McDonald at this stage. Luke McDonald, he didn't do anything wrong the other day. He's still trying hard. Whatever, I mean, he's certainly got his critics, that's for sure. But, look, it looks like at this stage that they will go with the safer bet. But there is still plenty of upside for Riley Hardiman. Mark, Will Phillips looks to have put on some size and may get a good opportunity early to take Wardlaw's spot in the ones. Is that a fair call, you think?
I don't think he'll take his spot. I think he'll mind his spot. But what he will do is give himself a chance. The problem is with these guys, how many centre bounce, how much time are they going to get in the midfield? Because at the end, even with Wardlaw out, you've got and now Simpkins in that form and make it even more complex. But you've got Parker's there. You've got LDU and Sheasel. Now they're going to be in there 50 to 60% of the time, and then you've got Powell next. And then I guess Phillips will then get the look in as that fifth mid, but he will get an opportunity to really build his reputation. And I think this is it for him. I think the first 3 or 4 rounds of the year are his chance to actually stamp his feet and basically say he belongs at the level, and for him to believe he belongs at the level and stay in the side, hopefully sort of semi-permanently. There's always going to be injuries, so hopefully opportunities will keep coming for him. The other thing that I'd say with him is he's definitely stronger, but he's running much better on top of the ground. He's looks like he's worked hard on his tank, which has been a real problem. You remember we had to take him off Dacos last year when he was doing a very good job in that Collingwood game, but I don't think that'll be an issue for him going forward. I don't necessarily think they'll need to use him as much in that tagging role, but his ability now to run out games and really, you can tell he's really strong through his core at the moment. He's not easy to tackle. He's going to get the ball away. He's certainly going to be a good distributor for us.
Yeah. Look, he doesn't, make any mistakes really when he's out on the football field. There is just periods of the game where he just goes missing, and he is a one-dimensional player where he's an inside mid. But he's starting to get that balance a little bit better. I thought he got a few possessions yesterday that were on the outside a bit. So hopefully, like you said, he can really take his opportunity. He's only got a 1-year contract, so every opportunity he's got to pretty much take. Otherwise, like we've spoken about, there's a number of midfielders coming through that team, and he could certainly find himself in the out.
I mean, Urquhart played very well too. So
he did really well. Yeah, he did really well. For an 18-year-old, it was very, very good, particularly in that first half. Another player, another young kid, a first-year player, Jesse, Finn O'Sullivan. Now, we mentioned him before, but he looks really composed with the football and played wing and half forward. To me, he almost looks like a lock to be in the round 1 team now.
Oh, 100%. And I think that other wing spot is something that we didn't have sorted out anyway in terms of who plays that other spot. That's a free spot in my mind, because who played that other wing last year? You had a bit of Tucker, you had a bit of
Dylan Stephens.
Yeah, there was a real mix. They didn't really settle it. It was Scott on one. Well, Scott, they played the first half of the year down back, which was a terrible error. But
even Ford played a bit there.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, good call. I think there's a spot there, and his ability to, because here's the thing, all of them are going to get some opportunity in the middle, but why do all of them need to be full-time midfielders? There's other positions on the field which, like if you look at the Geelong teams, that's probably a good example. You had Selwood, Bartel, Gary Ablett running around, but you had Kelly, you had, there was 2 or 3 other blokes in there who were running around who were midfielders in most other teams who had to learn to play other positions. I mean, you could argue Stevie J in a better team, younger in his career, would have been a full-time mid. I'm still
Toby Green started off as a full-time mid.
Yeah, that's another one. Exactly right. And he became an All-Australian small forward and one of the best we've seen in recent years. So I'm of the opinion that if he locks in a wing spot, what's wrong with keeping him on a wing spot? The same as a McKercher. I mean, look at Errol Gordon. He's an elite midfielder, but he plays wing.
Hey, poor old Bailey. Don't get rid of Bailey Scott.
No, there's 2 wing spots.
That's it. Oh, it's really 3. You rotate 3.
That's exactly right.
McKercher and Finn O'Sullivan were both swapping between half forward and wing.
Yeah, and I don't have an issue with that. And look, there is a part of me that says, McKercher, I really want to get into the midfield starting mix because of his pace. But, I mean, ultimately, it's just centre bounce. After that, everyone's coming into the contest anyway. So I'm not too concerned with that part. But yeah, O'Sullivan looks really settled. You can see why people say he won't be a high possession player. That's not really his go. He's a high impact player. I'm not really too concerned about that whatsoever. I think
that sort of suits the wing, to your point, by the way.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly right. Like you get some midfielders who rack them up, absolutely. But if I think of good wingers in the last 3 or 4 years, they get disposals, but it's more impact. Like Josh Dacos, he got an All-Australian wing position. You can argue whether or not he should or shouldn't, but he had a really good year that year. He wasn't.
They're 20 possession players, but they're very good defensively, which is actually Finn O'Sullivan ticks that box. So it does. I agree with you. Wing does suit him.
Well, Hugh McCluggage is probably a really good example in terms of now a premiership player who plays a bit of the midfield, but plays most of his game on the wing or the outside. And he's not a 30 possession player, but he's become a lot more dangerous with ball in hand and his ability to distribute it. And I think that's the most important part about the wingers for mine. It's the ability to distribute the ball cleanly and quickly from one end to the other. Because they're on the outside, they should have more energy. They should be able to, they're less crash and bash. So I think that he could really nail in that position. I think it's going to be exciting because he can play multiple positions. And while I agree with what you said before around we've got a lot of mids and a lot of pure mids, I think we've also got a lot of mids who can play other positions, and that's a good thing.
Yeah,
we've still got too many mids, and that's probably something that means that one or two will end up leaving at some stage because they won't get, they won't get full-time gigs. But a lot of them can play different positions, and I think that's why they went for O'Sullivan, because if whether or not they took him or Laylor, both of them can play forward. Both of them can play a different role to what we have at the moment, as opposed to a little bit more of a generic mid, like a Jagger Smith or a Sid Draper, who look fantastic. Like Jagger Smith looks ridiculous in the Carlton midfield already as a junior, but he's a pure mid. So I'm glad. I'm not got no issue with him taking O'Sullivan because he plays a very different role to any of the other mids we have.
He's classy too, that's for sure.
Yeah, 100%. He's not that tall, but he takes fantastic marks. Like his marking ability for his height is phenomenal. So I'm really excited to see what he can do on the outside. We shouldn't be expecting a high possession player, but I think his ability with ball in hand is going to be very evident early in the year.
Got a great tank as well.
Yeah, so far, by the looks of it. And, there was no doubt if he stayed injury-free in the juniors last year that he probably would have been the number one draft pick. So, the club did say he was the best player in the draft, but a few injury concerns last year just dropped him down one spot. Now, forward line, go. Oh, that's right. Forward line, and both Hansen and Constanti played in the ones team. Is there a chance both play? Because they're very different players, Mark. I think Constanti's very much a defensive-minded first forward player, which I love, and Robert Hansen's more the offensive one with more silky skills. That's probably going to get more scoring shots, more scoring involvements. Do you see both of them playing, or do you maybe just pick one of them?
I think Hansen Jr. is going to have to make sure his defensive plays up to scratch, but I think one will play and one might be sub. To be honest,
that's not bad.
But because I don't think they're going to need, we're going to have enough subs mids on the ground in the starting 22 that they can afford to have a different type of player as a sub. So I wouldn't be surprised if Constanti is the sub if Robert Hansen Jr. is not getting into the game, or vice versa. But at the moment, Robert Hansen Jr. looks like he's playing. He just looks so dangerous. But Constanti's good. I think they will both play together at some stage for sure.
Well, until Geordie Payne's fully fit, he's had an interrupted pre-season, Mark.
But that's another one. And I mean, Harvey will get a game at some point, I think.
I don't know whose spot he could possibly take. Jesse, might as well get your thoughts on this small forward role, probably one of the more important positional battles in the team. Do you see both of them playing, or do you see just one of them at this stage?
I think it's one of them because I just don't see this is. I just can't fit both in the team. I don't think. With the sub, yeah, that's a good call. With the sub, it's a possibility. I think it has to be one or the other because if you're going to have Curtis in there, you're going to have Zohar in there, you're going to have probably Simpkin and Parker or McKercher or O'Sullivan taking the two forward flank positions at any given time. So it means, and you've got the two keys. So there's not really a spot, which is potentially a problem that we're trying to fit a lot of midfielders in. Are you better off, having a genuine forward? But we'll be able to play with that over the year. But I think we can only play one, and I think Robert Hansen Jr. is obviously going to be a more offensive player. Well, yeah, it's going to depend what we're after in that position. Do we want someone who can score, or do we want someone who can add pressure? I go on the side of pressure, but as someone made a point to me on X, if you just want someone to get pressure, let's bring back Kane Turner, which is not a bad call.
Yeah, look, it is a little bit of a good point, but I think, Costanti, I thought his pressure was next level compared to Kane Turner's.
You got to do both.
Yeah, I thought he was ferocious at the contest. It was an interesting point here by K May, sort of said, surely Fisher is our best option as a small forward, get him out of the back line. Now, they did interview him in the box during the game, and he said he's been training with the back line. But he does miss playing the forward line, so that might be an option going forward. I'm not too sure, but I think it's probably Hansen's because he's still got Simpkin to come back in, who's going to play a similar role, high half forward, playing a little bit of time in the forward 50. So one of them will probably miss out, and it probably is Costanti at this stage. I think we've seen enough from Hansen to show that, he's really ready to step up his game. Jesse, Eddie Ford, I thought. Now, we mentioned him before. He played a really good game. We talked about that. Now, he did push up a lot up the field in that first half, but did some really good work inside forward 50 in the second half when he did go to the ones team. He's definitely asking questions, knocking on the door. Last quarter, he cramped and couldn't finish the game, but I did like his work yesterday. I guess it's just a case of who do we take out if he comes in?
Yeah, and that's the problem. He can't take the position of a of the two guys we were just talking about before because he's not a small pressure forward. So realistically, he should be fighting for a spot with
Zerha,
and you could probably argue Paul Curtis because Curtis isn't necessarily I wouldn't call him a natural crummer. He's more of a small medium marking Lindsay Thomas type as opposed to a pressure. Yeah. So, I mean, it's probably more that position and Dersma, like you said, they're all kind of fighting for that position. I've always been a big fan of Ford. I think he's got some real talent and some real upside, and I'd love for him to get a spot. He's actually someone that I wouldn't be opposed to trying in some other positions. I know we make a laugh about playing every one of our forwards in the back line, and I'm not it's not necessarily something I've thought about, but given that that's probably not the type of role we want in our forward line, given the mix we have, I think where he's shown in the past he can play different positions. So he might be one that I think there's enough talent there. They may not agree, given that I think they only gave him a 1 year extension. They probably do not agree with that. But I think he could play different positions on the ground. That's just my thought on it. I think that I'd be really keen to see what he could do in some of the other spots. So I really like what I see from him.
Well, that's a good point you raised about that 1 year extension. That shocked me. Is that because they're giving him a rocket and saying you've got to start working harder off the field?
I don't know if they see him as a future long-term player at the club, Mark, because we've got a lot of players in that position.
I just think I think he's such a talented player. Anyway, you're right though. We're crowded in that area. So, but
I rate him, and I've always rated him
for someone. If
100%, 100% he will be. I've always rated him, and I would love for him to get a game. But I don't know if our coaching group necessarily rates him.
It seems a strange thing to think of Eddie Ford when you're only winning 2 or 3 games a year, and the way he's played that he's not a permanent player. It shows the depth we're starting to build, though.
Oh, absolutely.
It took him about 30-odd games to get his first win, didn't it, or something like that? So
that's most of our players, isn't it?
I've never seen him play badly. I think he plays well every time he's in the seniors.
No, look, he doesn't do a foot wrong, and he has. I think you mentioned it before, Jesse, that he has pushed up the ground and played a wing role as well, and got a few possessions up the field. So and he did that yesterday. Saturday as well. Like first half, he was everywhere. He was getting a lot of possessions in the wing, half-back flank.
We've seen him, I think, in a couple of games go down and take some contested marks in the back line, take an intercept, etc. I mean, we're talking about someone who's they're 22 this year. He's pretty tall. I think he's got some decent attributes. I think he's someone. I think he scored 15 odd goals last year from
Yeah,
what,
about a goal a
8
game, I reckon.
Yeah, maybe just a little bit less than a goal a game, but yeah, he's someone who I definitely think we could do something with. But I tend to agree. Unfortunately, I don't necessarily know if they think that he's someone who can be a long timer, which is a shame.
Well, yeah. Look, I mean, if they had more faith in him, they probably would have given him at least 2 years. So, yeah, they're a bit unsure. I was a bit surprised that his manager would have accepted that offer because I would have thought he would have got offers last year if he was out of contract. Yeah, and it was sort of towards the like at the end of the year. So, interesting. Interesting year coming up for Eddie Ford. Mark, did you like Paul Curtis's game pushing up the field a lot? I noticed on Saturday he was getting a lot of balls in the back line, in the half-back flank. I kind of like him working his craft inside that forward 50 a lot more, but the club are pretty keen to, by the looks of it and by the sounds of it, push him up the field a little bit this year and almost play as a high half forward as well.
Yeah, I hope he's not a high half forward. I agree with you. I like him deep. I think he's our most dangerous forward deep outside of Larkey. So I think he's got a lot fitter, so he's more capable of going up and back now than he was. So I guess he's utilising that and maybe just working on it a bit during the off season, pre-season. But yeah, I'm totally with you. I think someone like that, he's capable of 40 plus goals. So the deeper he is, the happier I am. He's the strongest bloke at the club. He competes with Cherry. The biggest press, 160 kilo bench press. It's unbelievable. So you could throw him at full forward and clear everyone out, and he'd be a nightmare matchup because no one's going to push him off the ball. So anyway, I'd rather see him deeper, but maybe they're just experimenting a bit at this time of the year.
Oh, look, more than likely. But it was interesting to see. Oh, look, he's a good field kick, and apparently he has improved his fitness a lot. So yeah, look, it's good to hear, and he definitely gives us options. Another play here, Finbar Melly, Jesse. Now, great set of hands. Bailey Scott.
Mark's going to be cross. You're giving him to me.
Yeah. No, that's why I gave him to you, Jesse, because I'm pretty sure Mark would be frothing at the prospect. But Bailey Scott mentioned he's the best pack mark he has seen. If he fixes his kicking, he will surely play some games this year.
His marking is, it's pretty impressive. I think we probably said at the back end of last year, why is he not getting a game? Because his form was pretty decent. His kicking's woeful. No, I'm being a bit cruel. He was pretty good in front of goal.
It is pretty
VFL last year. Yeah, his goal kicking last year in the VFL wasn't bad from memory. I think it was pretty decent, but on the weekend, it was blustery on the weekend. Sure,
his confidence does look shot though at the moment, doesn't
it? Yeah, but geez, his marking is. His marking's good. You know why? There's a thing in my mind that goes, you know why I would like him in the team? Is because I still haven't solved who's going to ruck when Tristan Jerry does take his 2-3 minute breaks of a quarter. Because they threw Larkey in there and almost vomited.
I think that's how they're going to go.
Oh, that makes me sick. That makes me. It actually makes me physically ill.
It's not as dangerous as it used to be.
Oh God! But imagine he does an ACL first game of the year.
Don't bring that up.
From 2 minutes in the ruck.
No, it can't happen.
They'd burn down Arden Street. It'd be an absolute riot. Imagine that.
You've made a good point, though. I think at some point in the first 6 or 7 rounds, they will try Finbar in that role just to see what happens.
They have to play someone who can pinch hit in the ruck. They have to play a forward who can pinch
I'd rather Jack Darling.
Well, exactly. Yeah. I would rather Jack Darling be going in there to pinch hit instead of Larkey. Because what's the worst thing that's going to happen? He's going to get injured. Well, he's probably going to get injured anyway, to be fair to him. So, what I did say, I made a...
Finbar's dangerous. If they start bombing, if North need to bomb the ball into the forward line...
Well, he's able to contest for it,
He's the guy you want there. It'll stop the opposition.
Well, he's more crash and bash, so yeah.
And he's good out of position. He's so good at causing damage from out of position.
Yeah. I think
if his kicking's not 100%, it's worth a trial at some point.
Well, at least it's centre-half forward. Like playing a bit higher up the ground, try and take a mark and then wheel around.
Well, he's got the tank.
Yeah. I did say in my post at one stage during the year, especially not against the Dogs, but when we're playing forward lines or back lines that are a little bit more of a better mix, I'd be very open to playing 3 talls in the team just to see how it goes. That can. I'm also strongly of the opinion that for at least a couple games this year, once they're more confident in the Dawsons or Whitlock, etc., to play down defense, I still think that at some stage they are going to throw Charlie Comben back forward. And look, he kicked 3 goals in a quarter against Carlton last year. He looked on then. Look, I still think that's one long term who they'd be keen in getting up there and having a go with.
I was desperate. This time, or mid last year, I was desperate for Comben at some point to get back to the forward line. Now, because of Finbar and potentially Goad down the track, I'm less worried about that. I'd be more inclined to leave him there than I was. I mean, I'd be happy to see him play forward, but it doesn't bother me as much. Then again, you've got Whitlock and Dawson keep developing. They can go into the back line quite easily as well. So
no, but I mean, they're developing. Cor's only got a couple of years left, and Logue is injured all the time, so you do need that depth, which I think is really important. But yeah, look, in terms of Finbar, his trajectory is good. He was a freebie, like Mark mentioned earlier. It's about time that we got some freebies, some easy, some picks where you just throw at the stumps and you actually get one right. So that's good for a change. I'll tell you what, he's shown more than a certain number 1 mid-season draft pick ever showed. That's for sure. So,
Jacob Edwards.
But yeah, look, his intent's good. Yes, his goal kicking needs a bit of work, but I would have him in the team at some stage this year because they do need to play a forward who can chip hit in the ruck. I think we all know Darling's not going to play 20. He's not going to play every game. I'd be shocked if Darling plays more than 15 games because I just think that he'll need breaks and he'll have an injury at some stage. And that's okay. I'd be happy if he played 15 games, but that gives, 5, 6, 7 games for us to try something else. So, yeah, look, I think he's heading the right way, Finbar. He has all the attributes. It's just going to be work on the defensive side of his game a little bit more, which, is going to happen. It's funny, someone that we were really big on last year, and I was really big on being Tyler Sellers, who I am still sure in a better team could have been a decent forward. And he came into our team. And Mark, you made a really good point. He's probably a victim of the fact that we can't kick the football. So he played against 2 decent teams for us who can't kick the ball. And he's not a crash and bash type. He's a on the lead, good mark, almost a bit of a Nick Larkey type. Finbar is more of a crash and bash.
Yeah,
take the ball, a bit like Charlie Comben is. So, it gives. I think it helps. I think it's a different. Yeah, it's just precisely. It gives us something different. So I'm pretty keen to get him in the team.
We haven't had someone who clunks the ball like that since Carey. Let's face it. I mean, that's not Nick Lark. Nick Lark is a different type of player, as you said. He's one of the cleverest players in the AFL. There's no doubt about that. Super smart forward, and he can still take a good grab.
Yeah, he's a lot more like a Ben Brown.
We haven't had someone with vice-like grip like that in our forward line. I mean, Bailey Scott's right. He wouldn't have seen anyone mark better than that in the last 6 years.
No,
and
if you think,
huge leap. He's got a huge leap as well. So he's got X factor galore. But it's just, if he was a beautiful kick, he'd be playing round 1.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think that's a good call. In terms of Larkey is a lot more like your Ben Brown, almost your Drew Petrie type that we've had. They're not crash and bash marking types. While, if you think of those type, Nathan Thompson was pretty solid at taking a clunk.
Jared Waite was quite
Sav
good.
Rocker, Jared Waite. They're all, they were all. Jared Waite was very mobile. That's one thing I do like about Finbar is he's pretty mobile as well. Like he's able to get around. He's not just he's not a tall hulking figure who can't move. Do a 360 or do a circle. He can kind of ball hits the ground and at least he can compete.
He's an athlete.
Yeah, he's an athlete, and that's.
I mean, think about it. Pink and Teakle were both ahead of him last year. In terms of getting games in that forward line, he's probably gone past both of them.
Oh God, I hope he has.
Well, yes. No disrespect to those.
No disrespect for them. They'd make me look like a fool, but
Pink's. I mean, I think Pink's going to be a backup defender now, and Teakle's
backup defender.
Yeah, a 3rd or 4th rung backup defender, but Teakle is still fighting for that second ruck forward spot. Which Goad is going to be. I mean, it's going to be interesting when they play Goad in the forward line, the VFL, how he goes. he's doing well against Cherry, but we haven't really seen him do much in the forward line yet, although he did well on Common a few weeks ago.
I want to see Goad get a go over the next couple of weeks.
But he's so quick. I mean, on the lead, he's going to be very hard to stop it. So that'll be interesting. So at least there's some options there. It's very exciting. We haven't had that for years.
Just on Taylor Goad, now he has developed a lot over the last 12 months. I think Nick Larkey mentioned earlier today on SEN that he's really come out of his shell and he's starting to open up a little bit more. I think a good player comp at this early stage, I've just seen glimpses, I don't know if you agree with this, Mark, a little bit of Luke Jackson.
Yeah.
Like a very good.
Yeah, it's spot on. Yeah,
spot
on.
Very good below his knees. Got a little bit of burst of space.
He burst out of the centre and it looked exactly like Luke Jackson the other day.
Yeah, spot on.
That's a very good call. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the type of player they're developing, aren't they, with him? That's where it looks like he'll be a forward ruck. I mean, albeit, he'd be more than capable of a first ruck, but Cherry's going to be an All-Australian potential ruckman.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting, isn't it? They played his first season down back. It almost looks like a good decision now because he had to build up his fitness. He learns defensive parts of his game that you wouldn't necessarily know being a ruckman. So you learn different traits. You build up your tank. You get to play on key forwards and learn their patterns. You get to see a lot of the ball coming to you. I think it almost might have been good for his development in terms of learning things. It's a bit like Tristan Jerry. We kind of gave him that year when we still had Goldie where he was playing as our second forward because we didn't have another forward and he was terrible at it. But now all of a sudden when he goes forward, he looks like Wayne Carey, kicking them from the boundaries and stuff. Yeah. So you learn something being put in some of these other positions and it looks silly at the time, but you still learn. And when you end up getting that main mantle, you take those traits with you. So I think Goad... it was good for him to kind of play that position. And I think you're right. He'll get to play some forward line time this year. And that's going to help him as well learn some more. So I think, he's going to be an exciting one if he doesn't bugger off back to Adelaide.
I mean, I'm certainly not an expert on structure, but you would think if he is capable of playing forward and develops that way, I mean, then allows him to do all the ruck work in the forward half and allows Cherry gives him a bit of a chop out to work the other parts of the ground outside the forward 50. So it could help our balance quite well.
You make a good point. You make a good point there because I mean, they were talking about it today during one of the practice games, which is the whole two ruck conundrum and making that work, and how most teams can't still make that work. And he's going to have to build up the attributes, or you can't play him and Big X in the same team. But I think he can.
He'll have to be a very capable forward, and I think he's got the attributes to do that. But I'm looking forward to watching him play a bit of full forward, centre half forward in the VFL just to see how he goes there.
I agree.
Well, it's fair to say he's ahead of Bryn Teakle at this stage because he was in the probables team in the second half as well.
Well, and I think Mally's ahead of Teakle as a forward ruck as well. So you've got. Teakle's probably dropped down a couple of rungs now, so it makes it hard for him. And he's doing nothing wrong. He's still playing pretty well.
Teakle, look, he's a good, serviceable player, and he got thrown in last year because we had no other options. We had Callum Coleman-Jones go down. Finn Barton-Melly, they deemed was not ready last year, so they need to throw a big body in the forward line that could play as a secondary ruck. So, he got good opportunities last year. But I think at this stage, players are going ahead of him now, especially Taylor Goad. So, it
makes it hard for Callum Coleman-Jones, doesn't it?
Well, you never know. I mean, there's still a player there, but
absolutely.
But Achilles injuries can be career killers as well. So he's out of contract at the end of the year. We'll have to wait and see on that one. Jesse, I thought Luke Urquhart played a very good game. A ball magnet with a mature body for an 18-year-old. I don't think he'll get many opportunities this year. Probably won't get any, but maybe a player we might see in years to come, especially if he does fix up his kicking a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the one knock on him is his kicking, but he looks very good for what we took him at. He's got a lot of good physical attributes. Someone likened him when we drafted him to Kyron Hayden in terms of physicality, etc. I think he's a little bit more advanced in his football than Kyron was, to be fair to him. He's got all the physical attributes. His ability to find the ball looks good. His tackling looks good. his handballing's pretty decent. It's just that kicking he needs to work on. And I think if he can get that right, it adds adds another midfielder to the mix, which isn't probably a bit of a problem. But, it is a problem because we can't fit all the top 10 good draft pick midfielders we have at the moment in the team.
Yeah.
So, but it is, look, he looks like a player to me. It'd be interesting to see what other positions he could play as well, because he seems pretty high pressure. I'd be interested to see what I think there's a player there, and I think you could mold that into a few different things. So I'd be keen to see what they trial with him in the VFL, because they might just chuck him in the midfield and say go at it, and they may do it.
Who's the big-bodied mid at Brisbane who played really well in the grand final, played in the Bulldogs premiership side?
Dunkley.
Yeah, that's who he's modelling his game on.
Well, if he becomes half the players Dunkley, I'd be pretty happy. I mean, we're talking about
they could play second ruck as well, Jesse.
Yeah, Dunkley used to get the ruck gig.
He's that sort of size, though, so it makes sense.
Well, he is. I think the good thing about Dunkley as well is he plays defensive player, but he can go forward and kick a goal. And I think you need a second string to your bow being a defensive mid. To the point around Will Phillips earlier, you still need a second bow. You can't just purely be a defensive midfielder. So I'm keen to see what they can do with him. I would love for them to go, look, play the first few games in the VFL in the midfield, build your confidence up, and then maybe we try you a little bit down back, play a little bit up forward to see what we can add to you. Because I think there's a lot there to mould.
Well, apparently Liam Shields was a big reason why we recruited him. Was very much a big fan of Luke Urquhart. So I don't know how he knows him or anything like that, because he's from WA. So, yeah, interesting. That was mentioned in the broadcast the other day. Another player I wouldn't mind talking about is Zane Dersman, Mark. Now, played midfield first half and did some good work for the Probables team. It was the seconds team. Burning up his tank a little now after shoulder surgery in the off-season. Do you think they may look to play VFL a little more, to play more midfield minutes and develop his game there? Or do you think, no, he's a half forward that can have little stints in the midfield? Because we've got a million midfielders like we've talked about.
Yeah, I know. He can play. He played a bit of wing as well in the intra-club, I noticed. He played a bit of inside mid. He played a bit on the wing. He can play forward. I think they're trying to turn him into a utility because he's going to have to be to get a game. We've just got too many mids for him to be focused there. And unfortunately, it's hard on the forward line as well because, we've got Parker, we've got Simpkin, we've got potentially a McKercher, Finn O'Sullivan changing there. You've got Robert Hanson Jr., you've got Curtis, you've got Larkin, you've got Parker, not Parker. Who's the recruit from West Coast? Darling. So we're crowded there as well. So it's with people like Eddie Ford trying to get a run in there. So it's going to be difficult for him. I think he will start the season at VFL level, and I think he'll rotate through half forward through the midfield. I think. And I think he'll be flexible where he plays in the seniors. I think it'll be half forward flank, it'll be the wing, and a bit of time through the midfield. But it's going to be hard for him to get a look in instead of bounce attendance, as you would think this year.
No, look, and he might have to play a few more VFL games this year, just based if they want to develop his game there, that's fine. But he may just have to do it in the VFL in the midfield. But I do agree with you. I think he's more of he has to find versatility and he has to find a few different spots. So
he nearly took Mark of the Year last year. So the guy, he's got some unbelievable traits. I think he's a bit behind, though, in terms of this pre-season. He's only just coming back into it now. So I think, to be fair to him, he probably needs another 4 or 5 weeks to build himself up. And then hopefully, this time last year, he was in fantastic form in the pre-season game. He was kicking 4 goals every time he played. So I think he's very underdone at the moment. I think he's just going to be a bit of a slower burn. He probably needs 3 or 4 games in the VFL to build up his confidence as well.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, look, not too sure where he's at as far as fitness goes as well. Look, there was a shoulder surgery in the off-season, so he is a bit behind apparently. So, yeah, he may just find himself on the out early and just needs to find a bit of form. a forward that might benefit from either having Jack Darling or Finbar Malley take the second defender look like Cameron Zurhaar, maybe. Jesse, I know you've written off his career last week.
We're back.
But it did look like he looks like a player that would benefit being that third forward and taking a third defender. He looked really good the other day.
Yeah, look, he did. I still think my frustration from the last game is 100% valid, which is that he is a yo-yo in terms of he is very up and down his form, and I still think that is the case. And I think he's lost that defensive edge that he was famous for, why he's called the Bull. I think he's kind of given that up to be a bit of a showman. Though they remain, whether or not he's he's scoring or not, I guess it becomes less relevant if he's kicking 5 every game. Then if he kicks 5 every game, I don't care if he doesn't lay a tackle. So he looked. Look, it does help. It makes a massive difference. I think we've seen that before when we've played 2 forwards with him as the third. Because you got to remember when he came into the team in the Reece Shaw era, even then we had Ben Brown. We had sometimes we threw another forward into the mix. We had some randoms go through there from here and there. Mackay went forward once or twice, which was weird. So I definitely think that I think there's an opportunity for him to get the third defender. If we look at their first opposition being the Dogs, Liam Jones obviously out there, light down back. Rory Lobb is probably their best defender. We can make jokes about him. He looked good after he played us last year. And he got the job on the best forward against Essendon on the weekend. So he will be their main key defender. And then outside of that, it drops off a cliff. So you've got Gardner, who I don't think much of. They've got Busslinger, who hasn't played a game, who was a top 20 pick, who I think looks like a freak of a talent. I'd love to get him. He looks really, really good. But my point is they're very light on. So who goes to a Zurhaar type is going to be really interesting because they're going to have to play Lobb probably on, Gardner on Larkey, Lobb trying to intercept. It's going to be much tougher for them with Liam Jones out. I think he took like 20 intercepts against us the one game last year. So I think it's going to be very interesting. And most teams will have, a pretty mobile second defender. They'll have a big key position player who plays on the biggest one, and then they'll have someone who's a little bit more agile who can play tall or small, a bit like Aiden Core. But all of a sudden, you have to man up Darling, because I don't care if he is an old man and he can walk. The thing is that if you leave him on his own or put him on a forward on a defender who isn't experienced, we saw he will mark the ball and he can still kick a football. He kicked goals on the weekend. He can still mark and kick. That's not a problem. So someone has to go to him who is going to pay him attention, and that by virtue makes Zurhaar a more dangerous player. I think it helps our whole forward line become more dangerous. So I think our forward line becomes a much better dynamic. I think the biggest risk to it still is our ability to distribute the ball into it,
and probably retaining it in the forward half as well.
That's
been an issue for a long time.
Yeah, and that's why I'm happy to have the other forward pocket as a defensive mid with the aim of keeping the ball in. Plus, I think if Simpkin and Parker... The reason that I prefer Simpkin and Parker playing the forward flank positions, as in the half forward flank positions, is because both of them are very defensive players as well. They're good pressure players. And I think that if they're playing 70% there, 30% in the midfield, they should be able, they can both score. We know that they can both score, and they add a lot of pressure. So I think that I'm actually okay with that. But it just means that, you're kind of locked in terms of other stuff you can do. So we've got a lot of options, which is a positive.
Yeah, and that's all we can ask at the moment. We've got a little bit of depth there. So, so here we go. One final one, Mark. I mean, I think we've seen the benefits of Colin McKercher playing up the ground. It looks like he's going to play wing half forward. That's where he's been trialled throughout the course of the season. Obviously, getting Caleb Daniel into the club has released him up the field. It makes a big difference if he's getting the ball in the forward half and distributing the ball, because he's got an unbelievable set of skills, And he's one player, like Jesse sort of said, well, we don't have players that can kick inside 50, but he's one player that we really want the ball in the hands with, don't we, going inside that forward 50.
Yeah, I think it's exciting. The idea of players like Finn O'Sullivan, McKercher delivering the ball inside 50 with Sheasel and Powell, for that matter, and a couple of others. It's a very different situation than what we were looking at 2 or 3 years ago, where we literally had no one who could distribute the ball. It was just like a nerve-wracking experience watching it come out of our back line. And in the end, we just had to resort to those long kicks down to the wing, which was just, getting us nowhere. So, yeah, no, I think they've definitely made the right decision moving him forward. And you're dead right. Bringing Daniel in's made a massive difference to that. It's probably taken a lot of pressure off Luke McDonald as well. Maybe as well as losing the captaincy, Daniel coming in has probably taken a bit of pressure off him in terms of running that back line, and also so he can just concentrate on his own game, because he's going to have to fight for his spot now. I think, he and a couple of others, the older guys, will start in the side, but they're going to have to hold their form. I think the days of guys staying in the side when they're playing badly is gone. I think the team will be picked on form pretty much, bar a few players that can't replace too easily, like Cherry and Larkey, Comben. Most guys will have to, hold their form each week.
No, definitely. No, that's a good way to finish there too, Mark. Jesse, any final thoughts? I've kept you here long enough.
No, nothing for me. I'm excited to see these practice games, how we go, some of the things that they try out. Look, there's going to be tough times this year, but I think there's also going to be a lot of exciting times this year. And I'm, for one, am excited to see what they do with, some of the players that they've got available. I think it's going to be very exciting.
No, it definitely is. Yeah, it's certainly. Starting to see some green shoots, Jesse. So, yeah, finally, it's only taken 5 years since that was said. So, we're hopefully getting there. Mark, any final thoughts out there?
No, isn't it weird to think we've been through this for 5 years, and after 5 years we've got the youngest squad in the comp. It sounds like it's just beginning when you say that, but it's not the case. The mix is far better than it was, and bringing in those 3 older guys is going to make a difference. So I do think this year will be exciting. I don't mean that necessarily in terms of how many wins, but there's going to be more wins than we've seen during those 5 years, and we're going to be a lot more competitive. So it's going to be fun to watch.
No, it definitely is. Look, they're exciting times. We've got a lot of talent, and we didn't even talk about players like Harry Sheaser who look fantastic. So we already know what they're like. So we just wanted to talk about a few different players and their positions this year so far.
Sorry, one more thing before you go. How did you both feel about Clarko's comments regarding LDU?
Got no problem with it. What about you, Jesse?
I agree with it. I've kind of tiptoed around that comment because I already say enough controversial stuff that people get upset with. So if I said I don't really, if we lost LDU, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. I think X would hunt me down and block me or something like that. Look, LDU is a fantastic player. Don't get me wrong in any way, shape, or form. And I would hate to lose him because he's in the prime of his career. We need that. We lose him, and it means Simpkins going to take the burden and Parker take the burden while the kids all grow up. So I absolutely don't want that because it does set us back. But there is a part of me that goes, you've got this whole core group of young mids. By the time that they're ready and we're actually competing, how old is LDU going to be? It's probably going to be another 3-4 years before we're realistically competing well.
What?
Yep. I mean competing for
4 years.
Talking about a premiership.
Just let me dream about 2026 at least.
I'm talking about competing top 4, etc.
Exactly.
I don't think we're going to make 8 this year or next year.
Oh, what?
So then you're looking at 27, 28.
Oh God, I'm going to.
So on that regard. Look, if he left, I would take the compensation, and I would find.
Don't tell him that's how long it's going to take, or he will leave.
Well, what if it landed as a key forward right now?
Oh, that is controversial. Okay,
I'll tell you what. I'll give you one. So let's say he leaves, and we get a first-round pick. Let's just say we get and it would be like
one first-round pick.
The combo is only going to get us that. We'd have to trade.
We wouldn't accept. We wouldn't accept.
Two top 10 picks.
Yeah.
we get 2 top 10 picks. All right, so we've got those. We're crap again, so we get another one. So we get a compo. There we go. There's 3. But
What?
no, look. Let's just say we've got the 2. All right, and we throw it at a Harry Mackay or say like an elite
Ben King.
forward. Yeah, Ben King.
Yeah.
Would you give up LDU for Ben King?
No, he wouldn't get a game with Finbar on the side.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
I'd heavily consider it.
I don't think Clarko had any choice. But
I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
I'd give up almost any player on our list other than Harry Sheasel for Sam Darcy.
Oh yeah, that's.
I'd probably give up 2 of them.
Yeah. Yeah, look, it'd be handy. But yeah. Well,
God, he'd be handy. He rucks and he'll kick 10 every game.
Taylor
Goad.
Goad.
Got Taylor Goad.
Oh, if Taylor Goad can be 3/4 of the player I think Sam Darcy's going to be, then he'll be an All-Australian.
Yeah, probably even half the play. So I'll take that.
That'd be handy.
Yeah,
look, I think it was. I don't think you take it any other way. He signs, it's good. If he doesn't, we move on. There's no point being upset about it. If he wants to move and go somewhere else and chase a career,
I don't think he'll move on. But
no, I don't either.
I think he'll see the improvement that he's after. But if he
does, then you know what? We've talked about it. We've got 35 midfielders.
Yeah, it's the one area of the ground that wouldn't be catastrophic. So it'd be disappointing because his bats are going to the peak part of his career. So
that's all right. McKercher, according to Dwayne Russell, be better than Sheasel this year. So
people always underestimate Sheasel. I don't know why. It's just
I mean, but Dwayne Russell does a show with him. He loves him, and all of a sudden he's coming out saying, "Oh, I went and watched the North Boys in their inter-club match, and I think McKercher is going to be the better player."
Sheasel was best on ground in the inter-club. We haven't talked about him because we just take him for granted.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just don't think the broader AFL world still don't understand how good a player.
No. He's an absolute prodigy. But you know what? I almost think McKercher could be just as good.
Well, he won't be far behind.
No, I don't think you. I don't.
He's a different type of player, but he's an absolute match winner. There's no doubt about that. And I think so is Wardlaw. Wardlaw will also be a match winner, but he's another one who's just explosive. We've got a different mix of players in that area of the ground, which is good.
No, definitely too. Well, Mark, thanks so much for coming on tonight. I'll try and get you back on next week. We've got a match sim game this Saturday. So,
excellent.
Yeah, so we'll get more thoughts on that, see if there's any other positional changes or anything like that. You're happy to come on next week as well, Mark, if you are free?
Of course, love to, always.
All right, I'll just give you this. Hang on a sec. Thanks for coming on, Mark. Jesse, always a pleasure. I'll try and get you back on next week. Hopefully the cold has subsided by then, and you can give us a bit more freshness.
Oh, if we win against Melbourne in a practice game, I'll give you some freshness.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, we'll be talking it up like we did against Collingwood last year. So, yeah, we'll be really talking it up. But thanks also to all you lovely listeners. I should be back tomorrow to chat to another AFLW Premiership player. Yeah. So look out for that. Like, subscribe, comment, do all those fun things to help out the show. Bye for now, and go Roos. Thanks, boys. Thanks for coming on. Mark, you always